What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. We get some more elite fantasy hoops with me, Mike Zakarian. My dog is locked in and ready to go. We're going to move into some of the off season, as you can tell by this shirt right now that screams, I should have a coconut drink. But we've had a lot of movement so far in the NBA. We've got some old faces in some new places. We've got new faces in new places. Would have been better if I could say new faces in old places, but it's not. And I think we can use some of that information right now to get an edge, whether it's best ball basketball over on the underdog streets, whether you're sifting through the so rare marketplace, home leagues, or even DFS. So let's take a look at some of the moves that have happened this offseason and how that's going to shake out as we get ready for a new NBA season. So I want to get started with the Golden State Warriors. And yes, we're going to talk about the Splash Bro, Klay Thompson, heading to Dallas and how that fit might make him an exciting play. But first, I want to start with the roster that's left with the Warriors. Now, if you're listening to NBA podcasts or you follow NBA Twitter, you'll see everyone getting really excited for guys like Buddy Hield, DeAnthony Melton, and Kyle Anderson, who have all been added to the Golden State roster. However, I'm not really sure that's going to make a huge difference, and I'm truly not interested in any of them in the fantasy perspective. You could talk me into DeAnthony Melton a little bit if he can stay healthy, but the two guys that I want to focus on right now were already Golden State Warriors. It's going to be second-year player Brandin Podziemski and Jonathan Kuminga. Now, the pod god himself had a pretty impressive rookie year, which didn't really expect him to be a meaningful player heading into the season, yet he averaged 26 minutes a game. He actually took Klay's starting spot for a while and was closing over Klay for a bit too. And in those 26 minutes, he was averaging 9, 6, and 4. Now, Brandin Podziemski is very interesting because, yes, he outperformed what we thought we were going to get from him his rookie year, but now he's in all of these different trade talks. Now, the Warriors definitely don't want to let go of him because they're very excited with what they have with Brandin Podziemski. And if no trade happens, which we'll get to the trade in a second, and he stays with the Golden State Warriors, he's going to have a meaningful impact with this rotation. And yes, he played 26 minutes a game his rookie year. That's going to have to go well north of 32 to 33 because, again, he is going to be the starter. I think he's going to get more minutes than Buddy, than Melton, than anyone else that they're going to bring in, and he's going to have to provide offense. I know it was cool to dunk on Klay Thompson as he bricked out of the NBA playoffs and his time with Golden State came to an end. However, Klay was still shooting 38% from three, averaging over 17 points a game, and they're going to have to make up that offense. And I think a lot of that is going to come from Brandin Podziemski. Now, Podziemski is currently being drafted 103rd overall in the underdog streets, and you can find him for a pretty affordable price over on So Rare. So I'm looking for Podziemski to take a pretty big leap in year two. NBA players tend to have a leap in their second year, but now with the circumstances with Golden State, I really do think we're going to see Podziemski take a leap. Now, by no means am I saying I'm rooting for injuries, but with some of these situations, older stars who carry a huge load are usually susceptible to missing some time, and Steph Curry is starting to age up a little bit. And if somebody like Steph goes down, Podziemski is going to have to do even more. Now, the caveat to the pod god is he is in trade rumors. The Utah Jazz clearly are very interested in all the picks Golden State has moving forward, but also somebody like a Brandin Podziemski. Danny Ainge likes to get a young player back now. You can go back and look through the history of his deals. And if Podziemski moves to Utah, which is going to be a tanking team anyways, especially with no Lauri Markkanen, they're talking about trading Walker Kessler. Podziemski's going to start playing like 36 minutes a game. We saw what Keontae George did for the Jazz his rookie year, where he absolutely cooked down the stretch. And I think we would see even more of that from both Keontae George, but also Brandin Podziemski if he lands on a tanking team like the Utah Jazz. Now, the second Warrior I wanted to talk about was Jonathan Kuminga, who has had a bumpy road with the Golden State Warriors, has shown massive flashes. However, it seems to be that he can't win over the love and respect of Steve Kerr. Every time he gets cooking, he finds his way back to the bench. But with all of the Wiggins talk and how he kind of fell off a cliff a little bit the last 2 years after turning into an NBA Finals god in that series against the Celtics in 2022, I feel like we're going to see Kuminga emerge because the Warriors need to find out now. They're starting to look towards the future, and they need to know what they have in Kuminga and if he's going to be one of their building blocks moving forward. So I think we're going to see Kuminga on the court a little bit more than we have in the past. Now let's talk about the Clippers a little bit because boy, oh boy, are they a poop show. So we saw Paul George leave. He's with the Philadelphia 76ers. We've heard PG talk about it. We've heard Lawrence Frank talk about it. Hopefully, we never have to talk about it again. But when you look at their roster right now, it's Kawhi Leonard, James Harden, and the Bad News Bears. They brought on guys like Kai Jones, shout out Kai Jones, Kevin Porter Jr., who I won't shout out, although we will talk about here in a second. Josh freaking Primo is on this roster. Honestly, if you're an NBA player and have had a run-in with the law, reach out to the Los Angeles Clippers. It looks like they're hiring. But it looks like we're getting reports now that Russell Westbrook, who did say he was coming back to the Clippers, is most likely going to be waived. And the rumors are leading to him heading to the Denver Nuggets, which would fill a massive gap for the Nuggets as they do not have a backup point guard right now. I believe Colin Gillespie's still on their roster, but I don't know if that is the answer. And Reggie Jackson left on draft night to head over to the Charlotte Hornets. So if Russell Westbrook comes in, listen, I know we're not at peak Russ. It's not MVP Russ. It's definitely not efficient Russ. But if he's going to back up Jamal Murray and he's going to be out there, and honestly, he could play with Jamal Murray a little bit because Jamal Murray can shoot. Russ still averaged 11, 5, and 5 in 22 minutes per game for the Clips. I feel like he'd play a little bit more for Denver and can still be impactful. And listen, Jamal Murray has not been healthy through an entire NBA season. We know he was banged up towards the end of the finals. So I don't know. I feel like Russ could be a cheap flyer. Oddly enough, Russell Westbrook and Brandin Podziemski kind of close in their ADP. As we mentioned, Pod got at 103. You got Russ at 114 right now. And I could see that getting bumped up once he finds his landing spot. Now, I know we mentioned James Harden in our last video, so I won't talk about him too much, although I do think he's going to be putting up some pretty big fantasy numbers. And I don't know if people still have the thought of what he did for the Clips last year, which again was like decent basketball, but was not the Harden monster show that we're accustomed to seeing, right? He just averaged 16, 8, and 5. Well, now you've removed Paul George from the equation. We know the Clippers don't have a draft pick, so they are going to be trying to win these games because I don't think they want to be embarrassed next year's draft lottery when the ping pong balls come out and they get like the 4th overall pick and they're like, oh, congratulations, OKC Thunder. So I do think James Harden will be playing a ton of minutes and a ton of games. Kawhi Leonard, however, we've already just seen him get removed from the Olympic team with some murky conversation around that. So if that is the case and he's going to miss more time, like he always does, then I think James Harden's going to have to be that guy. Now, I really don't want to talk about Kevin Porter Jr. because, well, he's got that Miles Bridges in him.
This guy sucks.
But if we look back at KPJ's time in Houston, he did average 19, 5, and 5 for the Rockets. And like I was saying about the Clippers and their lack of draft picks, I do think Kevin Porter Jr. is going to be playing a lot because, again, their roster is obliterated. Yes, they still have Norm Powell there. And Norm Powell seems to play the same amount of minutes, whether he's starting or coming off the bench. So I think we know what we're getting from the Storm and Norman Powell. But I do think we'll see a pretty big workload from Kevin Porter Jr. So even though it pains me to say it, you can currently get Kevin Porter Jr. at underdog around the 162nd pick of the draft. There are a couple more obvious guys like DeMar DeRozan going to the Kings and Josh Giddey, of course, going to the Chicago Bulls, but we've already talked about that. So if you want to catch up on that, check out one of our more recent videos that are linked in the show notes and get caught up on all that sweet, sweet content. All right, we got 2 more hits that I want to talk to you about. We mentioned one already. Everybody is ready to wash their hands of Klay Thompson. I'm going to be a buyer. I'm going to be a Klay Thompson buyer. Listen, haven't you ever had this feeling? You got out of a very long relationship that turned toxic at the end, and it feels very bad immediately. But then a little bit of time passes. You start eating salads. You get into the gym. You're running a little bit more. Hey, maybe even try therapy. That's what Klay Thompson's doing right now. He's about to remind everybody what he can do. Sure, he's not going to be that two-way guy that was going for 39 in a third quarter, but it's still Klay freaking Thompson. I mentioned he shot 38% from 3, averaging 17.8 per game, and now he no longer has the threat of one of his teammates punching him because he's not playing with Draymond Green anymore. He's going to have Luka doing these weird no-look passes that's going to find him wide open in the corner to just knock down triple after triple. Klay Thompson's currently going around 105 with his ADP. And listen, I am on Klay Thompson Island now. So put on your Splash Bro jersey and come join me on Klay Thompson Island. And last but not least, I want to talk a little bit about some of the rookies that we've seen at Summer League so far. I'm not about to talk about Bronny James, and I don't know if we ever will on a fantasy basketball channel. But I was fortunate enough to head out to Summer League again for the 4th consecutive year and get to see some rookies kind of pop off a little bit. I even get to meet Matas Bucelis. And I'll be honest, I think I even mentioned this, that I thought the Bulls were going to slow roll Bucelis to start things off. But man, what we've seen from him in Summer League so far has been wildly impressive as he dropped 28 points in one of his first games and that insane dunk with a wild stare down.
Got ripped that time. Good defense by Sanogo.
Make it 12.
Oh, Buzelis caught a body underneath.
They've left, but the ones that are here are on their feet. He gave a little life to the building. Oh, Mr. Buzelis.
So a couple of the rooks that have stood out, Bacelis, absolutely. You can find his ADP right now at 133. Somebody else that stood out, I went to the Timberwolves Pelicans, the first game of NBA Summer League, and I was hyped to see Dillingham, and I thought that was going to be the standout guy. And then it was Terrence Shannon Jr., who absolutely balled out. Shannon's barely being drafted at 188 right now on Underdog, and I honestly don't know what his role is going to be with the Minnesota Timberwolves, who currently are championship ready with their roster. Yes, they lost Kyle Anderson, so they got to plug that hole a little bit. Jordan McLaughlin also left. I feel like Dillingham had an easier path to minutes for this team, but if Shannon continues to play the way that he was on both ends of the court, was big and fast and throwing down power dunks, I feel like Shannon could be somebody, a sleeper that he could take a shot at that maybe finds his way into a rotation. I don't think there's a path to him playing 30, 35 minutes a game or anything like that, but at 188 and Underdog, or for how cheap he's going to be going everywhere else, I feel like he's a nice little stash. Maybe the Keontae George of this season. And then the last guy I just want to touch upon was Reed Sheppard, who was absolutely cooking in his first couple of games for the Houston Rockets. His path to minutes is a little weirder. I know the Rockets are desperate for three-point shooting, and that's what Reed Sheppard can do. He also jumps into passing lane, so if he does find his way into minutes, he's going to be getting a lot of stocks, steals, and blocks for you fantasy dorks. But again, there's a lot of guards over in Houston, so it's kind of jammed up, whether we're talking about Dylan Brooks or Fred VanVleet or Jalen Green. I don't know what the Rockets are going to do with their rotation, but again, for a little bit of a late flyer, I really do like what I saw from Reed Sheppard at Summer League. All right, I think that's going to do it for me, but now I want to hear from you. What are some of the offseason moves that you've seen so far that have gotten you excited on one side of the deal or the other to attack this fantasy NBA season? And of course, if this is your first time tuning in, I appreciate you hanging out. Do me a favor, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell because you need to know when the content's going up.